we need a new welfare state, and it was from the cradle to the grave. Yeah. And it's saying we're good neighbours. It's saying we care about each other. If you're falling down, we come and give you a hand up. And that, we are generous people in our lives. And yet we elect politicians who are the epitome of meanness and selfishness. Yeah. And we have to re-establish a new welfare state and re-establish that consciousness. Thatcher killed it. Yeah. It wasn't the public good, it was private greed. If we don't plan the economy, if we don't plan the use of the world's resources, this planet will die. Yeah. Last year, we burned more fossil fuel than at any time in our history. And last year, the subsidies for fossil fuel were greater than they've ever been in our past. Yeah. And we know the problems. We know what the cliff we are heading to. Now that's the law of the market. That's the interest of corporations pursuing profit regardless. And you know what the Pope said about pursuing profits regardless? He said it is the dung of the devil. So if we've got the Pope on our side, we can't go wrong. So the key element is, this is the key element, we can do this. All those campaigns, single issue campaigns, all the great activists we've seen here, they're everywhere. Yeah. We won't unite on who to vote for the next election, but we can unite on the ideas. And those ideas can be the stepping stone on which we build a political movement. But we begin with the grassroots. And so this is not an organisation where there'll be instructions from the top. It is about facilitating connection. It is linking people up. It's one group learning from another. One group has a great idea. Good, pass it on. We'll all do it. We can learn about our past. Hear those stories of our occasional victories, great victories, and the defeats. But we learn, it's like a football team, you learn most from defeats. And my God, we've got some lessons to learn. So we can do it. We can do it. People have talked about hope, and I'll finish on this. The writer I work with, Paul Laverty, is a wonderful friend and comrade. He's fond of quoting St. Augustine. Apparently the saint said, hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to change them. Yay. We've got the courage.
Yay. Many people would have said, oh, not another party. We don't need another party. We've seen so many of these things happen. We're not intended currently to be a political party in any way, shape or form. That is not the aim of what we're trying to do. The aim is to try and organise around 12 principles that we believe is common and a common understanding between all of us. And the aim then is to get the activists that were so inspired by the Corbyn movement and the people that were so inspired by the opportunity for change in 2017 back to not feeling hopeless, but believing that change can happen, but understanding that we can't rely on an individual to deliver that change. It always was and always is down to us. It's us that will make the change that's needed. The idea is to set up hubs across the country, to work with organisations, to discuss how we can change politics, to run street stalls, to talk to people on the street. How does politics impact on your life? Is it working for you? Do you see that those politicians in Westminster are addressing the issues that you and your family face? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. I think we all recognise that the politicians are only interested in themselves and the people who buy them the lunches. They're not interested in us. And we aim to break that spell. We aim to train people who set up in those hubs. How do you lobby a councillor? How do you lobby an MP? How do you get the issues that impact our lives in the media? How do we do that? How do we make a difference as people? We aim to train people to go out on the streets and talk to people. How do we deal with the issue that people can't eat? How do we connect the different community groups together? We train each other with the skills that we possess to make all of our lives better. And that's what the network is about. That's why it's not a political party. We didn't want to get into the idea that, you know, come and vote for us or anything like that. Because politics isn't working for us. And the only way politics will work for us is when we change politics. And that's what this network is aiming to do.
We've got a horrendous political situation where now working class has no voice whatsoever. I mean, when we look realistically, working class only ever had, you know, edged their way in the Labour Party to get reforms. But now even those reforms have been thrown out the window and we actually have a duopoly. We have no choice in politics. But you know, politics is important, but class struggle is vital. And that's why we see our movement needed to organise itself better, not harping on to differences, not having egos, not thinking in 1980s that organisation was saying this or that comrade over there was opposed to such and such. We've got to make sure now that we unite, that we lay the groundwork tonight. We lay the groundwork, that we all start to understand what for the many means and how for the many can help our organisation become a powerful social movement, that the working class can find a voice through political activity, through campaigns, through demonstrations, through trade union activity, through going on the picket lines, from everything from campaigning for your local community garden right the way up to changing the planet. And we've got to do that. The responsibility is on us as activists to link up all of us. Imagine how frightened the establishment would be if we were united. And this is what we've got to do. That's the task ahead of us.
We've got to find, as Ian said, a new way of doing politics. Not by proposing a new party, for heaven's sake, we've got enough, but by proposing ways of working together. So we need to unite, as we did when Jeremy Corbyn led the Labour Party, under a set of principles with which we are can all agree. And it doesn't matter if you are still in the Labour Party, there are people who are still doing good work in that organisation, believe it or not. If you've been thrown out, or you were never in it, or you've left in despair, that's fine, work through the network. If you're in a trade union or in any other political organisation, that's fine. You can unite through the network. We can commit to working together. Whatever campaign you're involved in, right to food, migrant action, anti-racism, you know, Palestine solidarity, of course, I would mention that. I'm going to wind up. We have to build. When you go away, this is not a rally, this is an organising meeting. You go away from here, you find other people of like mind in your areas, you build your hub, you connect through this network with other hubs nationwide, and we build a network, a kind of skeleton upon which flesh can be added in later days, and who knows what we can make of this. So I would say, get out there, start organising, we can unite, there is hope. So over to you guys.
This event is sponsored by, amongst others, some of Britain's biggest and most corrupt weapons makers. These are the very companies subsidised by our tax pounds who make billions of pounds from the slaughter of innocent people in Yemen, in Ukraine, where they charge a 30% premium, and of course, in Palestine, as we sit here now. And it's for that reason that one of the 12 principles, and I really encourage you to read this leaflet that has all 12 of them on it, is that this network will be committed to a foreign policy that is committed unequivocally to work for peace, the rule of international law, universal human rights, the rights of refugees, and a fair, non-racialized immigration system in this country. What this network is saying is that the majority of us in this country want peace, not profits. What the majority of us in this country want is to put people before profit. And key to putting people before profit is our principle in which we state an uncompromising opposition to all forms of racism and discrimination. As my former boss Nelson Mandela said, you are either opposed to every form and type of racism and discrimination, or you are part of the racism problem. Yeah. And Martin Ford, a KC appointed by my constituency MP to look into racism in the Labour Party, has told us clearly and unequivocally where Keir Starmer's Labour Party stands when it comes to racism. Let us be clear. This network, which aims to bring together people at the grassroots, will be proudly anti-racist. We will bring people, all people, together. We will create again in this country a politics for the people, by the people, not a politics that is for the elite, by the elite, in the interests only of the elite.
I've decided tonight to choose one of the 12 pledges, and the one I've decided to talk about tonight is education, not least because I work with a teacher trade union, but also I've got 2 kids, so education is really, really important to me, and I'm sure to everybody here. And I've written this bit down because this is the bit I can't get wrong. This is the actual pledge, and our pledge says high quality state education to ensure that all have an equal opportunity to fulfill their potential without incurring the burden of debt, and end to privatisation, which would just Yes, please. If we can get that, then that makes everything else so much easier, doesn't it? It really does. And I think one of the things I really want to talk about is the parity of esteem that we don't have. As a working class girl from the northeast, there were no expectations on me whatsoever. I wasn't going to go and be a lawyer or a doctor or a famous actress, although I am in Ken Loach's most recent film. That wasn't going to happen for me. And so, and there's this narrative as well that says, if you don't try hard, you might end up being a cleaner. Oh my God, imagine the worst thing in the world is being a cleaner, when we've just seen throughout COVID that actually being a cleaner is one of the most important jobs that you could possibly do. We need to work towards changing the attitudes towards this type of education. Vocational and, and academia should be seen with a parity of esteem, as I say. They're both important, it doesn't matter. Some of us are reading books and doing exams and creating things. Some of us are brilliant at using our hands and building things, and there should be no difference in that. And I feel really strongly that that is a narrative we need to push. It's a narrative that is not pushed because the working class are seen as the lower class, and we have to tidy everyone else's mess up, and we have to clean, and we have to build, and we should be seen as lesser. But I'll tell you one thing, during COVID, did anybody really, really miss all those people that were coding law into legislation? Oh my God, the world almost ended, didn't it? No, it didn't. Schools cannot function without cleaners. Hospitals cannot function without cleaners. Nothing can. And to minimise the role of a cleaner is just absolutely disgusting. Everyone thinks our performance needs to be measured, and it's not. It's not that our performance needs to be measured. Things like Ofsted and things like that do not work. It is just a way to tick a box and take away our free choice. The education system needs to be completely renewed so that teachers can teach, teachers get paid better, children can feel safe and comfortable and learn, and they can feel valued. The For the Many Network will lobby to do that, and I would ask all of you to join local networks, to join your local hubs to get this done, because this will be the start of our future.
I'm a product of unregulated, greedy, corrupt capitalism. I'm here to briefly speak about the current so-called cost of living crisis, or rather the cost of greed crisis. It's affecting disabled people generally. Of course, everyone apart from the very wealthy are suffering from the reactionary policies of the Tories and the inaction of the Labour Party leadership, our so-called opposition. Disabled people, despite recent equalities legislation, are still more likely to be unemployed because of access to education, inaccessible housing and decent accessible public transport, to name just a few basic social factors. And during times of rampant deliberate austerity, these barriers are even more insurmountable. And in some ways, I used to belong to an organisation called Direct Action Network, an organisation run by and for disabled people. And we were involved in protests in London. We would handcuff ourselves to buses in Trafalgar Square, or handcuff ourselves to the trains to fight for accessible public transport. And we did achieve an awful lot in terms of equality for disabled people. But I feel it's kind of reversed. Under this Tory government, we're going back to the Victorian age. A lot of disability user-led organisations have been incorporated by big business or have just collapsed altogether because of lack of funding, etc., etc. Starmer and Co support the Tories by not promising to restore the money cut when it comes to the NHS, education, etc. But are happy to buy money for obscene amounts of military spending and replacing tridents, plus their backing of oppressive public protest laws and anti-trade union laws, to name just a few things socialists should be fighting against. Starmer won't reverse these cruel cuts because his economic values are identical to the Tories. He won't be seen dead on a picket line, but he will back the bosses when they want to increase profits at the expense of the workers. Nor will he reverse oppressive legislation, because he'll want to use it himself. So we need an alternative to all the mainstream neoliberal reformist options, and the need to build a coalition amongst other socialists. That's why I'm so excited to be part of this network. I know there have been other incarnations of cooperation on the left, but I'm confident that this movement will prove more radical and not be hijacked or infiltrated by those wishing to undermine our politics. We can do this for the many, not the few. Thank you.
Liverpool Women's Hospital has been under threat for 8 years now, and it's part of the wider restructuring of the NHS on the American model. In order to give the private sector a foothold into health, they had to shrink the NHS, because when we got all our needs met by the NHS, we didn't need a private sector. They couldn't get a foothold, because why would you pay again for something that you could get on the NHS anyway? So unfortunately, there's a cross-party consensus on the NHS, and so I really welcome this network, because we need more people to be aware of what they've lost. People just don't understand what they've lost until they try to access it, and they can't. So if we can build a movement, because as NHS campaigners, we can't do it on our own. We need everyone to join, and we need to fight for the housing and the education that Laura talked about, and our health. And we can't work and we can't care for our families if we don't have our health. When you talk about the American system to profit from health, you have to deny people care. It's the only way you can make money out of health. You can't give people all the things they need and still make money. So we've now got 7.7 million people on waiting lists, and that's the equivalent of the combined populations of the 14 biggest cities in this country, in the UK. We've got people on trolleys, queuing ambulances, we've got staff having to go to food banks, we've got more than 2,000 food, we've got more food banks than we've got McDonald's. So in the 5th richest country in the world, we can afford a world-class NHS, and we can't. Actually afford not to have it, because the only way we can not have it is we'll pay for it with our lives and the lives of future generations. So I really welcome this network to build the movement across the country. We can all fight for the 12 principles, and particularly I'd like to invite you to fight for the NHS. Thanks.